The cold walls of Ravenshollow. The first light of dawn broke sluggishly across the moors of Ravenshollow, painting the land in shades of grey and silver. Morning mist clung stubbornly to the ground, curling like restless ghosts along the stone walls of the old barony. The castle itself rose above the fog, grim, unyielding, and solemn. Its battlements, scarred by centuries of storms, loomed like watchful sentinels. Few dared speak kindly of the place, for though it was rich in history, its master had turned it into a stronghold of silence. Baron Alistair Ravenshollow had not sought company since the death of his wife 5 years earlier. Widowed young, he had built a life of distance and severity, hiding his grief beneath the mask of command. His household feared him, his tenants respected but did not love him. Where others saw an imposing man of title, wealth, and iron will, Alistair saw only a hollow existence he had not chosen. The one soul he had not withdrawn from was his daughter. Clara Ravenshollow was 8 years old, a delicate child whose health had always been uncertain. Her pale complexion and thin frame were the talk of servants, though none would dare mention it within the Baron's hearing. She was quiet, too quiet for a girl of her age, often lingering in the nursery or chapel with little appetite for laughter. She had her mother's eyes, clear and blue as summer skies, but without the warmth behind them. Alistair loved her with a fierceness that surprised even himself. Yet, he did not know how to be both father and mother, protector and nurturer. He could command armies, dictate terms to dukes, and manage estates spanning leagues of farmland, but when his daughter coughed in the night or pushed away her supper, he felt helpless as a boy. It was for this reason that, against all instinct, he had agreed to hire a nurse. The widow came on a bleak morning when the sea winds cut sharp and cold. Her name was Margaret Hale, though most called her simply Widow Hale. She arrived in a modest carriage, her belongings packed in a small trunk, her black gown neat but worn at the hem. A shawl covered her head, yet strands of chestnut hair, streaked with early grey, framed a face both strong and gentle. The steward, Mr. Harrow, led her into the great hall, where the Baron awaited. Alistair stood tall, his broad shoulders draped in a dark coat, his expression carved from stone. He studied her with the dispassionate gaze of a man who had seen many applicants before her and found them wanting. "You are Widow Hale," he said, his voice low, steady, and without warmth. "Yes, my lord," she answered with a curtsy. Her voice carried neither fear nor boldness, but the calm steadiness of one accustomed to enduring hardships. "You have references," he continued, glancing at the papers Harrow held. "You served in the household of Lord Denham until last winter?" "I did, my lord. I cared for his young son until—" she paused, lowering her eyes. "Until illness claimed him." Something flickered in her tone, grief, tightly controlled yet lingering. Alistair noted it but did not press. "You are widowed." "3 years, my lord. My husband was taken by the fever." There was silence, heavy and searching. Widow Hale did not look away, though most women shrank under the Baron's gaze. At last, he inclined his head. "You will find the child in need of patience. She is reserved, fragile. You are to see that she eats, that she rests, that she is kept from chill or undue exertion." His jaw tightened. "If she worsens under your care, you will leave. If she thrives," his voice softened by a fraction, "then you will have my gratitude and her safety." "I understand, my lord." Margaret was led to the nursery, where Clara sat upon a cushioned window-seat, staring out at the misty moors. She held a small wooden doll in her lap, but her fingers did not move it, only clutched it absently. "Clara," said Harrow with awkward cheer, "this is Widow Hale. She will be looking after you." The girl turned her head slowly. Her eyes, blue and bright yet distant, rested on the newcomer. Margaret knelt so she might meet the child's gaze at her level. "Good morning, Lady Clara," she said gently. "That is a fine doll you have. Did your mamma give her to you?" Clara nodded, a faint whisper escaping. "Her name is Rose." "Rose is a beautiful name," Margaret replied with a small smile. "May I sit with you and Rose?" The girl hesitated, then shifted to make room. Margaret sat beside her, not crowding, not pressing, simply present. Clara looked at her a moment longer, then returned her gaze to the moors. Margaret followed her eyes. "It looks lonely out there," she murmured. "But do you know what I think? I think the mist hides secrets. Maybe fairies dancing, or deer wandering. Perhaps even angels watching." For the first time in days, Clara's lips curved faintly, almost but not quite a smile. From the doorway, unseen, the Baron watched. He said nothing, but something in his chest, something he had locked away, shifted. Days passed. Margaret Hale moved through Ravenshollow with quiet efficiency, her presence neither loud nor intrusive, yet felt in every corner of the nursery. She brought warmth to the rooms that had grown cold with neglect. She coaxed Clara to eat small portions by turning meals into little rituals. She taught her to thread beads, to hum simple hymns, to tend to a potted herb set by the window. At night, when Clara coughed, Margaret sat by her bedside, stroking her hair until sleep returned. And when she prayed, she did not pray as a servant or a nurse might, but as a mother, softly, earnestly, whispering words of protection over the child. "I pray for her like my own," she murmured one night, unaware that the Baron had lingered in the shadows of the hall outside the nursery, listening. The words unsettled him. They were not rehearsed or spoken for effect. They were truth. And truth was dangerous, for truth awakened feelings he had long buried. Alistair found himself watching her more often than he cared to admit. He noted the way she bent to hear Clara's soft voice, never rushing her. He noticed the way her hands, roughened by labor yet gentle, braided the child's hair. He heard her low voice humming hymns his wife once sang. And at times he caught himself wondering, not about her competence, which was evident, but about the woman herself. The widow's eyes carried sorrow, yes, but also strength. She was neither young enough to be naive nor old enough to be hardened. She seemed whole, in a way he no longer felt himself to be. This troubled him, for he had vowed, in the silence of his grief, never again to bind his heart to another. And yet, when Clara began to laugh, softly, hesitantly, like a bird testing its wings, it was Margaret Hale's presence that had drawn it forth. The cold walls of Ravenshollow had begun, imperceptibly, to warm. A prayer that changed the Baron. Winter settled upon Ravenshollow with iron grip. The moors turned white, the air sharp enough to bite the lungs, and the castle fires burned day and night. Within those stone walls, however, change was stirring, quiet, fragile, but undeniable. Clara was stronger now. Her cheeks, once wan, showed a faint color. She ate small meals willingly, played with Rose in elaborate games Margaret invented, and sometimes laughed aloud. The sound startled the servants, who had grown used to silence in the nursery. For Alistair, it was both balm and torment. Each laugh reminded him of his late wife, Eleanor, whose voice had once filled these halls with song. Grief twisted in him like an old wound, yet alongside it rose something new, hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope could be lost again. And so, though he admired Margaret Hale's devotion, he guarded himself fiercely. Still, he could not deny the truth. The widow was the reason his daughter was flourishing. And he found himself watching her more than he should. It happened one bitter night when the wind howled through the chimneys like a chorus of wolves. Clara had spent the day coughing, her fragile chest straining with each breath. Margaret never left her side. Alistair entered the nursery to find the widow sitting in a chair by the girl's bed, Clara curled against her shoulder. Margaret's lips moved in prayer. "Lord, grant her strength. Guard her through the night. Make her well as though she were my own." The Baron's hand tightened on the doorframe. Those words again, spoken with such conviction, such tenderness. He cleared his throat, and Margaret startled, lifting her head. "My lord," she said softly, shifting Clara carefully onto her pillows. "Forgive me. I did not hear you." "You pray for her," he said, his voice unreadable. "Yes." Margaret folded her hands in her lap. "Always. She is not your child." Margaret met his gaze, unflinching. "No, my lord. But love is not confined to blood. She is a child in need of care. I have known loss. I will not see another little one left without a mother's prayers." Her words struck deeper than he wished to admit. He had forbidden himself to hope, forbidden himself to feel. Yet here was a woman who offered her heart freely, not for gain, not for duty, but for love alone. "Do not give her promises you cannot keep," he warned, though his voice lacked its usual steel. "I give her only truth," Margaret replied. Clara's illness worsened before it improved. For 3 nights the child burned with fever. Margaret scarcely slept, bathing her brow, coaxing water past her lips, whispering prayers through tears she tried to hide. On the 3rd night, Alistair remained in the nursery as well. He sat in the shadows, his broad form hunched in a chair, unable to leave. He watched as Margaret tended the child with unyielding patience, her hand steady even when her own exhaustion showed. At last, when Clara drifted into easier sleep, Margaret sagged back in her chair. She brushed a stray tear from her cheek. Alistair rose and crossed the room. "You have not rested," he said. "Neither have you, my lord," she answered, weary but resolute. Their eyes met. For a moment, the cold walls between them cracked. In Margaret's gaze he saw not only strength, but loneliness, a reflection of his own. "She is all I have left," Alistair admitted quietly. The words shocked him, for he rarely spoke so openly. "And she is enough," Margaret said gently. "But she needs more than duty. She needs warmth. She needs joy. She needs you, not only as protector but as father." The truth of it pierced him. He turned away, fighting the tide rising in his chest. He had hidden behind grief, behind sternness, but this woman saw through it all. Clara recovered, slowly but surely. Each day she grew stronger, her laughter brighter, her steps more confident. She began to run in the courtyard, her scarf streaming in the wind, Margaret always close behind. One afternoon, Alistair found them by the garden wall. Clara was planting the herb Margaret had shown her how to tend, humming a tune. Margaret knelt beside her, her shawl pulled close against the chill. "She has your eyes, my lord," Margaret said without looking up. The Baron stiffened. "So I am told. She will need them, eyes that see beyond duty, beyond sorrow. She will need a father who teaches her how to live, not only how to endure." Alistair studied her. "And you speak as though you know what she needs better than I." Margaret finally turned to him. Her expression was not bold but earnest. "I speak as a woman who has buried her husband and child. I know the weight of absence. I pray she will not know it again." Silence stretched between them. For the first time, Alistair allowed himself to see Margaret not as a servant, not as an employee, but as a woman, one tempered by grief, yet stronger for it. She was not Eleanor, nor could she ever be, but perhaps she was something different. Something he had not known he needed. The moment of change came one evening in the chapel. Clara had gone ahead, her small voice singing softly as she lit a candle. Margaret lingered behind, her hands folded. Alistair entered, watching the scene from the back. Margaret knelt, whispering her familiar words. "I pray for her as my own." This time, the words no longer unsettled him. They broke him open. For he realized then that Clara already saw the widow as a mother. And he had come to see her as more than companion to his daughter. She was the answer to a prayer he had never dared utter. Slowly, he approached. Margaret rose to her feet, surprised by his presence. "My lord." Alistair's voice was low, roughened with emotion he could not mask. "You have given her life again. And in so doing, you have given it back to me as well." Margaret's breath caught. "I asked for nothing, my lord." "I know." His gaze softened, no longer the cold mask of the Baron but the man beneath. "And that is why I cannot deny it. You prayed for her as your own, and now I pray you will be ours. Not as nurse, not as widow, but as wife. As mother." Margaret's eyes filled, though she steadied her voice. "Are you certain, my lord? You swore once never to take another bride." "I swore never to love again," he admitted. "But love found its way back to me, through you." Clara turned then, her small voice breaking the silence. "Papa, will she stay with us forever?" Alistair looked at Margaret, waiting. She knelt beside Clara, drawing the girl close. "If your papa wishes it, and if you wish it, my dear, I will never leave you." Clara's arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "Then I wish it." Alistair's chest swelled with an ache both painful and sweet. He reached for them both, his hand resting over theirs. The cold walls of Ravenshollow had at last begun to warm, not with duty, not with obligation, but with love reborn. From that day forward, the castle was changed. Laughter echoed where silence once ruled. The Baron walked lighter, his sternness softened by joy. And Widow Hale, no longer widow, but Baroness of Ravenshollow, remained ever constant, her prayers answered in ways she had not foreseen. For she had prayed for the child as her own, and in return she had been given a family, and a love that would endure the fiercest storms.